I've been an admirer of yours for a long time, so the honor's mine.
That means a lot.
Yeah.
Researching you was a lot of fun, and that is really my the reason that I either bring a guest on or don't. It's really incredible what you've done to your mindset. And the thing that I have the chills just thinking about asking this question.
Okay.
There's a Malcolm X quote that you really like.
Yeah.
Tell me what it is and why it's so powerful.
That which you do not hate, you will eventually tolerate. And I think that identifies most people's lives. In other words, average becomes sort of like this slow asphyxiation. It's almost like an anesthetic. And that over time we become kind of immune and dulled to the average that we're becoming. I know this is true, at least for me. You probably experience it yourself too. And so over time we sort of minimize where we're at. In other words, I'm a little pudgy instead of being, no, you're a fat ass, right? You don't magnify the degree to which the pain ought to be affecting you. And so really what he means in that is, listen, you're going to get out of your life what you'll accept. That's really difficult for people, I think, to understand is, look, what you think you're worth and what you're going to tolerate is absolutely what you're going to bring into your life and what the outward part of your life is going to look like. And so I live by that. Like, I let myself sort of feel the pain and the difficulty of being not where I want to be in whatever that area is, whether it's my spirituality, my relationships, my money. I let myself feel that pain because, as you know, there's two motivators, right? There's the gaining of pleasure, right? Wanting to go get something, chasing the dream. But then there's the avoidance of pain. And for a lot of champions, that's a pretty big driving force for them. And so at least for me, I leverage both of those things on me to get myself to take action. So that's what that means to me.
You've got the whole concept of blissfully dissatisfied, which I think is brilliant.
Thank you.
Walk people through what that is, but what I really want to know is, how do you keep that from breaking you?
Wow, no one's asked me that before. It's along the same vein, really, as getting what you'll tolerate. So there's this misnomer, and you've watched this even in your own life or the successful people you've interviewed. So there's this thing people think that, like, I'll be happy when? Once I get like this big, amazing home, or once I get this car, or once I get this relationship or an amount of money, then I'll allow myself some happiness. The problem is the finish line always moves. You never arrive there, right? The other part is people think, well, if I enjoy myself now, I'm going to lose my drive. In other words, if I can just wire myself with enough pain all the time, I won't lose my drive or ambition. The truth is, there's no correlation between the two at all. There's no relationship between you feeling complete pain all the time and losing drive. And so I talk about living in a state of blissful dissatisfaction. And really the best example of that would be like if you've ever, I love a good meal, right? You know, if I bite into a great piece of steak, if you're a steak eater like I am, you take that first bite, it's like complete bliss, right? There's no correlation between how great that tasted and your lack of desire for the next bite. In fact, that bliss causes you to want more of it. And so the more we can begin to reward ourselves with bliss, we're not going to lose our dissatisfaction. We're not going to lose that. And so for me, our brains, this dopamine hit you get when you do something successful, if you constantly cheat yourself out of that hit, right, biomechanically in your body, less and less in the future will you want to achieve the next level, the next dream, the next step. And that's why so many people stall out in life. They got to a certain point and they cheated themselves out of the bliss, out of the celebration. It's important that we celebrate our wins. We celebrate our lives because it causes us to want the next bite. It keeps us hungrier, not the reverse. And so for me, I want to live in a state of being grateful and blissful now, not waiting for some future place or date that may never arise. So that's what it means for me.
Yeah, no, that concept to me is really powerful. And I talk a lot about, 80-20, right? I spend 80% of my time thinking about the things that are amazing in my life that I'm grateful for, the beautiful things that I want to build and create. But I also spend 20% of my time kicking myself in the ass, because otherwise you get really stagnant. But the feedback that I get from people is they end up going down a dark path. Like, how do you help people not begin to erode their self-confidence? And maybe the right place to start with that is, where does self-confidence come from?
Right, which is important because there's no relationship between that and eroding your self-confidence. In other words, self-confidence is really self-trust. So the first thing is, the people I know that are really happy are very self-aware. In fact, the best entrepreneurs I know are very self-aware. They're aware of their shortcomings, right? They want to improve them. They want to get to the next version of themselves all the time. And so for me, self-confidence comes because I didn't have it. And I think anytime you meet somebody like yourself or myself who might now appear self-confident, because I really had to find tools and resources because I was so insecure and shy and introverted. So I had to find techniques and resources to build that up in me. And for me, it's very simple. It's the promises that I keep to myself. if I have a habit over and over of beginning to stack one on top of the other of keeping promises I make to me, not other people. In other words, the minute you begin to get external in your life, worrying about what other people think about you, right? You've lost all control. And it never fills you up. And people's admiration, people's gratitude towards you will never fill you up. It's your own. It's your own inside. And so for me, self-confidence comes from keeping the promises I make to myself. And the other part of it is being aware I'm doing it. In other words, most people don't give themselves enough credit all the time. They're very aware of these 20% things and not aware of the 80, right? And that's why the dosage is so important too. You've nailed it. It should be 80-20, right? Because people get addicted to this. I'm not good at this. People don't like this about me. I don't feel good. Instead of focusing on the 80 and stacking it up. Wow, I did eat what I said I was going to today. I did get up when I said I was going to. I made the amount of phone calls. I treated people in such a way I promised myself. It's not just doing those things. It's rewarding it. It's being aware of it and stacking that up. When I work with athletes, the successful athletes I work with, when they're in a slump, it's never that they can't hit a ball anymore or make a shot or swing a golf club. They've lost their self-confidence. Somewhere along the way, they've lost the ability to focus on the things they are great at and stacking those promises they make to themselves. And the way I get them to break their slump is not correcting their swing or getting them positive. It's getting them to acknowledge the small promises, showing up to batting practice early, hitting that extra bucket of balls, beginning to reward themselves for the extra promises they keep to themselves, puts them back in a state of self-confidence. All of a sudden, they're hitting the ball great again.
All right, this is so important, man, and I really hope people are listening. And your story is so incredible, and if we had more time, we could go down every avenue. When you were starting out, you're broke, your wife's car got foreclosed on, your water was turned off at one point. I mean, it's like literally crazy.
Yeah.
How do you begin to build that, like for real you, not in the abstract, but how did you begin to build your self-confidence when like you're teaching people how to do something that you haven't actually done in your life? Which like that moment is where most people get trapped, right?
Yep.
They see you now successful and they just write you off a little bit because it's like, well, you've done it. But if they could see you at that moment and understand what you're telling yourself and get to like the reality of you're Velcroing your car to look like a Mercedes, right? So there's this really weird, like you're not quite like just fully accepting where you are, but yet you really do accomplish it.
Yeah. Wow. That is such a good question. That's another question I've not been asked that way before. So if we really go back and we look at it, I had a couple good things happen for me, or to me. One was at that time, my wife did get frank with me. This is not who you are. This is not what you're about. I don't recognize this person. This is who you are. And I had another person, to my benefit, pointing out to me the things that were great about me. Now, this is going to sound hokey, but I'm going to give you the big one. And this is why life gives you these great tests. I had a really good friend of mine. I went to lunch, and he said, I don't know who this guy is here in front of me. And he goes, let me ask you a question, honestly. Right now, what are you grateful for? And at the lunch, I said, jack shit. Nothing, brother. There's nothing good in my life right now. And I'm not exaggerating this to you when I tell you this, and this is a factual story. As I'm mouthing these words, two people walked in with an older man. Both of them clearly were fighting cancer somehow. Both had lost their hair. One of the ladies had a bonnet on, and they were barely moving in. Both walked by our table and gave me the most warm greeting, the warmest smile as a stranger. And he goes, that's pretty freaking pathetic. You can't find anything in your life to be grateful for right now. And on the drive home, I'm not kidding you, I started to stack gratitude. I started to take inventory. Because if you can find things to be grateful for in that space, man, is your life going to be rich when there really are external things to be grateful for. So my first mechanism out of that space was honestly to stack the things I was grateful for. And I started reinforcing it over and over and over again. And what happens is there's this reticular activating system in our brains, right? And all of a sudden, because that's the messaging I was giving myself, all of a sudden, all these things start to come into my awareness that I'm grateful for. I start to magnetize to myself some people that I needed to find into my life, and that was the next layer. I started to see things to be grateful for, my health, my fitness, people who loved me. And what it did is it changed my state. When I stacked gratitude, I changed what I did in the morning, and I changed what I did in the evening. And so somehow by grabbing control of my morning and by grabbing control of my evening, I got some measure of control over the middle of my day. I was an out of control person back in those days, meaning this. I woke up worried, stressed, fearful, and I immediately start thinking about a bill I had to pay, something that was wrong, and I'm in a state of reaction to begin I'm talking within 6 minutes of waking up, 6 seconds. Most people listening to this, that's what they do. I said, I got to grab control of my morning, and I set up routines in my morning. Maybe they served me, maybe they didn't, but they were things I could deliver on doing for myself. And so not only did that give me control over the day, but I started to stack my self-confidence too.
And what were some of those things that you grabbed onto?
Huge. So, and I'm not pitching this, but I do have audios out on this stuff too that people can go get for free. But
Which, by the way, are amazing.
Thank you, man. Thanks.
No, 100%. And I really hope people dive in. Like your content is incredible.
Thank you. So is yours, which is why I wanted to find you. And I for a long time wanted to be in your presence. So my morning routines are really detailed. I get up and I hydrate. The second thing I do every morning is I do something cold. So whether that's I jump in the ocean, because now I live in the ocean, but in those days it was taking a cold shower or splashing some cold water in my face or walking out when it was cold. It shocks our nervous system. Our fight or flight kicks in. We're in a cellular, electric alive state. I obviously do some prayer and meditation every single morning. I've still not touched my telephone. So there's a rule, there's 30 minutes I cannot touch my telephone when I wake up. That's the hardest thing to do in the world and the thing that could benefit you the most, because what's ever on that phone, you have to react to. And typically it's stuff that's not great. And so I don't touch that. I do my meditation and my prayer, and I do some stretching, I do some breathing exercises, and then at that point I allow myself to enter the world after I've got my state controlled. And I work out every morning, except for Sundays. I work out every morning.
Talk to me about working out. That's something that completely changed my life.
Obviously.
And every time somebody asks me a question about, how do I'm lost, I feel, completely out of control, I don't have confidence, my answer is workout.
Me too.
So why?
Well, I think everything in our lives starts with our body. If you're a person of faith, you believe that's where your soul is housed, right? And so it's you do emotions. You don't just feel them, you do them. In other words, and you know this from things you've learned in your life, but like joy is an actual action, not just an emotion. We feel a certain joy, there's a certain breathing, a certain movement in our body. Depression and sadness is something we do. We're more hunched over. Our breathing is more shallow, right? And so there's a correlation between the way you move your body and your emotions. They're directly, this is even before we get to dopamine hits and our nervous system I'm just telling you that the way you move your body is an emotion. You do emotions. And so when you move your body, you can't be in full workout mode, moving your body, running, walking, jumping jacks, jump rope, and be depressed. They don't go together simultaneously because your body doesn't get the connection. I'm moving like I'm joyful. I'm moving like I'm having sex. I'm moving like I'm happy. These are all joyful states. You can't be depressed simultaneously. So the quickest way to change our behavior, our emotions, and our state is with our body.
All right, now let's talk about the like end sets, the ones that really burn and really hurt. Mm-hmm. One thing that I found is, and you've talked about this with entrepreneurship in general, you said it's the greatest like self-awareness mechanism where you're gonna find out who you are, what you're capable of, how hard you're willing to push. Yeah. Most people though, getting into that position, like it's hard, right? That's a sort of a bridge too far.
Yes.
But
I love where you're going.
When you start in the gym and it's like, do I do this extra set or not? Do I push myself? Do I do an extra exercise? You going back to confidence and self-trust, it's like you begin to learn something about yourself.
Oh boy, I'm stealing that from you.
No, please, man. Yeah. And that like legitimately changed my life. And so when I see guys that are successful entrepreneurs and they're jacked, that never surprises me.
Me either. So I play these very strange games with myself when I'm at the gym. When I'm working out, I always do one extra rep, one extra set, because it's a promise I kept to myself. And here's the biggest thing. It's a pattern. It's a pattern I keep of me. I always do a little extra. I always go the extra inch. And the quickest and easiest place to do it is the gym, because I can always grab one more weight, one more set. And here's what it does. It shifts your identity.
All right, talk to me about identity, because that is, so I heard that first from Tony Robbins, the notion that identity drives behavior. And that was one of those like lightning rod moments where I was like, whoa, that's the hook, right?
Yes.
If I want to change like my behaviors, I need to think of myself in a different way.
Correct.
You've leveraged identity really powerfully. How have you done it, and like what are some specific moments where identity came to your rescue?
So identity is the governor on our lives. It's the invisible force that no one understands, and once they do understand and get a hold of it, their life can change. And so not only if you don't get a hold of this, will these outward conditions of your life keep being exactly the same, but you could behave differently, you could do all the working out, you could be thinking great thoughts, but you are going to get out of your life You're going to be the most powerful force in the world, I think, is to be consistent with the concepts, ideas, and worth that you hold for yourself. You will get that out of your life, what you will tolerate. Okay. The deeper part of that is identity. And so identity is very much like a thermostat sitting on a wall, right? This is important. Once that temperature is set at a certain degree, everything in the world externally can hit it, and you will find a way to get that temperature. So even in this house, let's say it's set at 80 degrees. If we opened up all the doors and cold air, just the worst things in life, the blizzard of life came in, the thermostat will kick the heater on and it will regulate this room back to 80 degrees. The reverse is also true. It's a super hot day. Great things are happening in your life. It's getting hotter and hotter and hotter. If you're at 80 degrees, that internal thermostat will find a way over a window of time to cool your life right back down to 80 degrees again. So the key, the secret key, is to be able to shift that identity. 90, 100, 120. So some of the ways, strategies to do that are very simple. One is let's just say financially, you're a 200 degreer and I'm an 80 degreer. If I'm in your proximity over and over and over and over again, you will heat my identity up somewhere in between mine and yours to 150 degrees. Same in fitness, same in everything. So the more you can layer in multiple people, the stronger and stronger that force is. So that changes our thermostat through association. It's a huge, 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 huge thing. People say you are who the 5 people you hang around. This is why. They adjust your thermostat. That's number one. Second way you can change your identity is through doing short bursts of something in a window of time you've not done them before, and they change the thermostat temperature permanently, almost like a water line in the pool. So if it's certain amount in the gym, or a certain amount of phone calls in your business, or a certain amount of appointments, you make a certain amount of money, oftentimes you're never the same again. You've seen this in your own net worth. I've seen it in mine. There became a point where I made a leap in a short window. I was never really the same again. I could go back a little bit, but not back where I was before. So it's activity or successes, achievements in short bursts of time. And then obviously our self-confidence impacts identity too, and we've kind of covered that. Those are 3 quick ways.
That's incredible. So walk me through your baseball career ends. Mm-hmm. I know that your dad and you said he's your best friend.
He's my best friend.
Growing up,
Yep.
Alcoholic father.
Correct.
You said till I think you were 14 or 15.
That's right.
And then they're introducing you constantly as the shy kid who plays baseball. Baseball falls away, and now it's like, how do you get out from under, well, I'm the son of somebody that struggled with drugs and alcohol. I'm the kid who was supposed to be great at baseball and now that's gone. Like, how do you get out from under the weight of that?
Yeah, it is weight too. When I was small, I was also really undersized. So it's probably one of the reasons I lift weights. I was always every baseball picture, I'm the kid holding the sign in the front, right? So I was small and skinny. They used to tease me Eddie Spaghetti, and I'd get bullied at school, and I never retaliated. So I had that mixed with shyness, mixed with chaos in my home, which many people can relate to. And I got to tell you that the shift for me, sports was good for me because it gave me an out that I finally found something that I was pretty good at. I think the biggest shift in our lives, the things that makes us the happiest, is that when somebody helps us identify our natural giftedness. And when I was a little boy, when I got a little bit older, they pointed out my speed. So it wasn't my lack of size, I was fast. I was the fast kid, right? I always wanted to be fast kid, and I got confidence in baseball doing that. When I got into business, they said, you're intense. When someone points out a gift about you that you also kind of intuitively know to be true, they're linked to them. They say, you're intense, you're passionate, you won't get outworked, you're relentless. I went, I am those things. And when someone linked those gifts to me winning, now I believed I could win. That's the other way to change identity, is when someone can link your giftedness to the victory, you'll believe it. Not like you're great, that's general, that's bullshit. Right. But it's something you know specific, like for you right now, you wouldn't brag about them. There's a few things you know what, I am good at these things, right? I've always been good at these things, it's natural for me. And when someone links that to you winning, like for you, for example, you're an unbelievable interviewer. You have this general, you don't need to be the smartest person in the room because you probably are most of the time. And so there's a confidence that allows you to be present when you interview me and just listen that's different than anyone who's interviewed me before. And so that's a natural giftedness for you, which is why there's a part of you that kind of knows, you wouldn't say it, but I am pretty good at this. This is a good program. And so the way we change your identity, the way I changed mine, was by getting in touch with what some of my natural gifts were and then using them in my career, using them in my life. that shifted the weight right off of me. Because the weight was, I suck, I'm shy, I'm small, I have a screwed up family. That's the weight, right? The lifting off of the weight is, these are some gifts God gave me, or the universe gave me, or that at least I know I have, and I can spend my life using these gifts. Now I've got hope. Now my identity's changing. Now my life takes a different direction.
That's amazing. One thing that you have talked about, and this is, I think, the thing about your notions on identity that I find really incredible, is that in the early days of you building your business, you said, and I quote, I was a dick.
Yeah.
But you were open to hearing that. Most people can't hear that. So that's a moment where you accept that your identity is something that you're not proud of. How do you make that change? How do you go in a new direction where somebody, instead of pointing out something beautiful, they're pointing out something ugly?
Yeah. Aren't most of the friends that you revere the most willing to take coaching from you?
100%.
Me too. And so I can't tell you why I'm this way, but I do believe it was baseball. I never took it personally when a coach said, you're dropping your shoulder. In other words, because of athletics, when a guy said, spread your right leg out, your legs are too close together, I never thought, I suck, I can't hit. I wanted to know how to hit better. I wanted to know how to throw better. And so for me personally, I'm constantly in a crisis to get to the next version of me. It's not like I'd like to. I wish I only would like to. I probably have a little bit more peace in my life. I am in a crisis to get the next version of me. And so the guy sitting in front of you right now, if I come back in a year and I'm just the same exact person with the same thoughts, same ideas, same ways of delivering them, this was a wasted year of my life, right? So I want to know how to get to that next version of me. And so for those of you that struggle with taking criticism, you got to ask yourself, how important is it to you to grow? Because you were put on earth to grow, to contribute, to serve, to help. You were in your way. And the current version of you is perfect as it stands right now, but it will be inferior next year. You're perfect as you are now, especially you ladies listening to this. There's all this messaging, you're not this, you're not smart enough. Women are too dominant, then they're a diva, right? Or you're not beautiful enough. Ladies, men, you too, you are perfect as you exist right now, but that version of you isn't sufficient next year. You got to be crazy, hungry, crisis to get to that next version of you. I want the data. I want the input. I want the information. I want the feedback to get to the next version of me, regardless of how it emotionally makes me feel. I'm like driven by that. Without that information, why am I living?
Dude,
right.
That whole concept, like when people really ask how I've been able to be successful, it's that. It's, I'm stoked on who I am today, 100%. Yes. Like I'll give myself the pat on the back before anybody else. But I'm so desperate to get better. Yeah. Like I'm so hungry to know why I'm inadequate right now for what I want, right?
Correct.
So the way that I sum it up is your past can never be bigger than your future. So it's like once you've done something, right? I built $1 billion business, but like for me, I'm not looking at that. I want to know what do I need to do and become in order to hit that next thing?
Okay.
That
not only are all achievers doing that, but all happy people do that. In other words, here's how we know you're perfect now. You've produced the external life you have, so you are perfect for that life right now. You are all you need to be right now. But if you want a different life, an improved life, a growing life, right, an increased life, this version of you is inferior to get to that place. And so the reason we have rapport, the reason we like each other is like, I also want to be surrounded by people who are not messaging me, is enough enough? Right. Everything's good, man. Take a break. And I may not want more money. You and I both have a lot of money, right? We'd probably like more, but it's not my driver. I want more peace, more gratitude, more abundance, more contribution, more memories, more experiences, more joy, more love. That will never be enough for me. Put me in the ground if I don't get any more of that stuff, right? I want to grow. I want to see the next place. And so that's the journey. Those of you that have faith, if you believe there's this place you're going to someday, that's because you're always going someplace. So you might as well want to get the information and the equipment to get there. And that's where I want to go.
I love that. How do you keep your standards so high? And then how do you push them even higher the next year?
I'm really lazy. So if you left
Not
me...
the answer I was expecting.
I know. And that's so I want to give you the honest one. Like left to my own devices, right? If you just left me like what I'd like to do, hey man, I have no problem laying around. I like sleeping. Like people think, they meet people like, they're robots, they're other life forms, they're just different than me. No, we build habits, rituals, and disciplines that serve us, okay? Now, part of those habits, rituals, and disciplines have sort of turned me into a more confident person. There's no question about that. So my standards are mandatory because you get your standards, right? And so The reason my standards are set so high is because I don't want to leave it up to my own devices, right? My standard is 1 more minute on the treadmill. My standard is 1 more person I can reach that day, 1 more phone call, 1 more something. And so for me, I raise them every single year, but the way I get to do it is I link it to my reasons. And so goals are really empty to me. I have a thing on goal setting, but like my big thing is that you show me someone with compelling, emotional, gigantic reasons, I'll show you someone who's changing their standards all day long. So like, give you one quick version that you've not heard before. One of the reasons I'm relatively fit is not just peak state. I have an uncle in my family that died at 50 years old of a heart attack. He's my godfather, my dad's only brother. I kind of resembled him. And I look like him a lot. So on the way back from his funeral, my reticular activator's on heart attacks. On the TV screen on the airplane, I'm listening to music, is the Oprah Winfrey show. She's going through a new heart scan. I've unplugged my headphones, plug it into the airplane one. They're talking about this new scan at Cedars-Sinai that at that time was new. It could read the plaques in your arteries, the calcifications, without going, really invasively. I scheduled it. I went in. I had a world-class doctor who understood reasons and leverage instead of just prescribing. Because when we coach people, you need to do this, you need to do this. Doctors do it. Take this pill, take this. He understood leverage and reasons. What you do is you take the scan, then you go to lunch, you come back. I took the scan, I went to lunch, I had a burrito, I came back, and I'm in when I walk in, I sit down, the doctor comes out, and he says, "Oh my, I can't believe these arteries are in that young body." Got my attention. We walk back in, we sit down. He could still go, "You need Crestor, eat clean, get out of here." Isn't that what an average doctor does, right? No, wired me with huge reasons. He goes, "Let me ask you a question. I heard your wife's pregnant. I said, "Yeah, I have a son." And he says, "Do you want to be there when he graduates from high school? To be there for that day?" I said, "Yes, sir, yeah." He goes, "Your wife's pregnant. What do you have?" And I said, "A daughter." This is where you get a dad. He goes, she was 6 months pregnant. He goes, would you like to walk her down the aisle on her wedding day, or are you okay that it's some other man?" I went, "What the fuck is on this scan?" Right? And he goes, "I want to be very clear with you. If you keep going down the road you're going, there'll be some other man with your son at graduation high school, and a stranger's walking your daughter down the aisle that's not even born yet on her wedding day." And I went, boom. And he goes, "But if you do exactly what I tell you to do, you'll be there." And so to this day, brother, there are mornings when I wake up, not every morning, I don't want to go to the gym. I go, "Bella's wedding, Bella's wedding, Bella's wedding." So my standards are high because of my big old reasons. Other dudes may miss the gym that day because they're not going to miss their daughter's wedding if they don't go. But I've convinced myself I will. I get emotional. I've convinced myself I'll miss my daughter's wedding. So I will get my ass out of bed at 4 o'clock in the morning, and I will get to that gym because my reasons are bigger, so my standards are higher. So that's what I think causes us to have great standards, is huge reasons.
When you're working with people that are just at an elite level, how do you help them find those reasons and attach something to it?
So there's 2 motivators in life if you really want to move somebody: someone's childhood and their death, and then in between, other people. And so most people, if you start talking to them, will tell you about their childhood because that impact. And they are constantly in the back of our minds all the time. We're thinking about death. It's this thing we know that's coming for us, the end of our life. And what inspires us is really what I said. We all want to be that version. We just don't allow ourselves to feel the emotion of it. So the more you can bring it closer to you, the better. So I do that with them. I link their big reasons to what they want, and it opens up a completely different level for what they want. You start talking to an athlete about, hey, you want to hit 30 home runs this year, that's one thing. But you start talking about, how'd you like to have your mom there when you give your Hall of Fame speech? I just interviewed T.O. and Marshall Faulk. Both Marshall's in the Hall of Fame and T.O.'s going in. And to watch T.O.'s face start to talk about how his grandmother won't be there who raised him in the Hall of Fame. That was his motivation. You ask him his whole motivation to play football? Grandma. Not Hall of Fame, not, Pro Bowls, grandma. It's always people that we link these achievements to. So that's how I get them to, believe it or not, even athletes, I get them talking to me about the people and dreams they have. Then we link their goals to them.
Oh, that's amazing. Tell me about the time where you were trying to give a speech and you were so freaked out that your vision was blurring and you couldn't even read what was on your card. Because honestly, if I hadn't heard you tell that story, I would just assume you're really good at this by nature because you're so good at this. You're so good. And communicating is crazy.
Thank you.
And I've seen you in front of 50,000 people. It's bananas.
Right.
So how did you start from like just absolutely being paralyzed by fear. Like, what was that process?
Oh my gosh. So, boy, you really do your research. Yeah, my first time I talked, I literally went up and blanked out. Like, I literally could not think. I could not see the card. How I fixed it speaking was over time, but I'll give you a couple of key things on speaking for everybody. One, I had to figure out, you know what, someone said to me, goes, you love baseball. You don't stutter when you talk about baseball. You don't get insecure. I go, well, I love that and I believe in it. They're like, oh, you don't, you talk about your kids, you're great. I thought, oh, there's a correlation here between me actually saying what I believe and what I'm passionate about and my ability to communicate it. And so now my first layer is always, I must be passionate about it and I must believe it, and I'm never doing an impression of another person. So I always come from a place of saying what I really believe, because you can't transfer to somebody that which you don't experience yourself. I can give you passion, I can give you energy, I can give you my belief if I'm experiencing it. Big key as a speaker, I'll give everybody. Stop trying to convince everybody of what you're saying. That's not the threshold of being a good communicator. People do not need to believe what you're saying. They need to believe you believe what you're saying. And as long as they believe you believe what you're saying, you're an effective speaker. I stopped trying to get people to believe me. There's a neediness. There's a salesmanship to that. I stopped that. It's a subtle difference. I just want you to believe I believe it. That's influence. Influence is you believe I believe it.